You know, it's funny the things you remember from your childhood. The smell of rain on hot asphalt, the way the streetlights would make halos in the fog on a cold night. For me, one of those memories is my grandmother's hands. She had these long, elegant fingers, and she'd always wear this one particular ring. A silver band with a small dark green stone. It wasn't valuable, but she never took it off. She'd tell me it was a worry stone, that if she ever got scared or anxious, she'd just rub that smooth, cool stone, and it would steady her. I hadn't thought about that ring in years, not until last month. My name is Ben. I'm an archivist. I work with old documents, preserving them. It's a quiet job, a job for people who like things orderly, predictable. Maybe that's why what happened got under my skin the way it did. It started with a phone call. My father. His voice had that tight, clipped tone it gets when he's stressed. My grandmother, his mother, had passed away. It wasn't unexpected. She was 92, but it's never easy. He asked me to handle the estate. She lived in a small, old house in a town called Ravens Hollow, about 3 hours north of here. One of those places that time forgot, nestled in the woods where the sunlight struggles to break through the pine canopy. The drive up was peaceful. Autumn was just beginning to bite, and the forests were a firestorm of red and orange. But the closer I got to Ravens Hollow, the quieter things became. Fewer cars, fewer sounds. The GPS started acting up, showing me roads that hadn't been paved in decades. I finally had to rely on the handwritten directions my dad had faxed me. Yes, faxed. That should have been my first clue. The house was exactly as I remembered it from childhood summers. A two-story Victorian, its white paint grayed and peeling, sitting under the watchful shadows of ancient oak trees. The key was under the mat, a mat that said, "Welcome," in faded, frayed letters. The inside smelled of dust, mothballs, and that peculiar, sweet scent of old books. My task was simple. Go through her things, decide what to keep, what to donate, what to throw away. It felt invasive. Rummaging through the drawers and cabinets of a woman who was intensely private. She was a historian, a collector of local folklore. Her study was a treasure trove of weirdness. Books on Appalachian myths, accounts of strange lights in the sky, clippings about missing hikers from the 1950s. It was in the bottom drawer of her heavy oak desk that I found the box. It was a simple polished mahogany box, no bigger than a shoebox. It was locked. There was no key. That felt intentional. Why have a lock if there's a key? It was a final puzzle from her. I'm not proud of it, but I pried it open with a letter opener. Inside there was no journal, no stack of letters, no pile of old photos. There was just one thing, her ring, the silver band with the dark green stone. It lay on a bed of faded purple velvet, looking, waiting. I picked it up. It was cold, colder than it should have been, sitting in a room temperature drawer. And the second my skin touched that silver, a jolt went through me. Not an electric shock, nothing so dramatic. It was a drop in temperature, a sudden, profound cold that started in my fingers and shot right up my arm, settling deep in my chest. I actually gasped. I dropped the ring back into the box. My heart was hammering. I stood there for a full 5 minutes, just staring at it, trying to rationalize it. A draft, a trick of the mind, grief. I left it there. I closed the box and shoved it back in the drawer. I finished my work for the day, trying to ignore the strange, heavy feeling in the room. That night, I stayed at a little motel on the edge of town. I couldn't sleep in that house. Not yet. The next morning, I went back. The box was on the desk. I was certain I'd put it back in the drawer. Absolutely certain. I stood in the doorway, my hand frozen on the knob. Maybe I'd forgotten. Stress, fatigue. I walked over to the box. It was closed. I took a deep breath and opened it. The ring was gone. My blood ran cold. That's not just an expression. I felt it, a literal chill spreading through me. I emptied the box. I turned it upside down. I got on my hands and knees and searched the floor around the desk. Nothing. The ring had vanished. I spent the next hour tearing the study apart, growing more and more frantic. Nothing. It was just gone. I finally gave up, collapsing into her worn leather armchair, my head in my hands. This was insane. I was being haunted by a piece of jewelry. And then I felt it. A weight in the front pocket of my jeans. I slowly, so slowly, reached into my pocket. My fingers closed around cold, familiar metal. I pulled it out. It was the ring. I hadn't put it there. I knew I hadn't. I was wearing the same jeans from the day before. I just pulled them on at the motel. This wasn't possible. I should have thrown it. I should have driven to the middle of the lake and hurled it into the deepest part. But I didn't. I just sat there, holding it. And that's when the first one happened. A whisper. Not in the room. In my head. It was my grandmother's voice, but stretched thin, frayed at the edges like an old recording. It sees what you see. I shot up out of the chair, my heart trying to burst out of my ribs. The house was dead silent. I was alone, I was sure of it. I ran to the window. Empty yard, empty street. It sees what you see. It was clearer this time. A statement, not a threat. A fact. I looked down at the ring in my trembling hand. The green stone seemed deeper, like looking into a still, dark pond. I did the only thing I could think of. I put it on. The cold was immediate and intense. It felt like I'd plunged my hand into ice water, but the whispering stopped. A strange calm descended. The panic receded, replaced by a morbid, pulsing curiosity. I spent the rest of the day wearing the ring. I went about my work, but everything felt different, sharper. The dust motes dancing in the sunbeams looked like tiny galaxies. The sound of the floorboards creaking sounded like a symphony. It was exhilarating. I felt connected to the house, to my grandmother, in a way I never had before. That night, for the first time, I decided to stay in the house. I lit a fire in the hearth, made a simple dinner, and sat in the living room. The ring felt warm now, comfortably so. I found myself absently rubbing the stone with my thumb, just like she used to do. As it got darker, the feeling began to change. The sharp, pleasant clarity started to bend. I'd catch movement in the periphery of my vision, just a flicker, a shadow detaching itself from the deeper shadows in the corner of the room. When I'd turn my head, nothing would be there. The house's normal sounds, the settling of old timber, the wind outside, began to form patterns. They started to sound like breathing. Shallow, rhythmic breathing, just on the edge of hearing. I told myself it was the fire, the wind. I was just spooking myself. But the ring on my finger felt heavy, ominous. I must have fallen asleep in the armchair. I was jerked awake by a sound. A real sound. Not the wind. A scratching. Coming from the study. A slow, deliberate scrape. 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 Like someone was dragging a fingernail across the inside of the mahogany box. I stood up. The fire had died to embers, casting the room in a hellish, pulsing orange light. The scratching continued. I didn't want to go. Every cell in my body was screaming at me to run out the front door and never look back. But my feet moved forward, one step after another, down the dark hallway towards the study door, which was slightly ajar. A sliver of darkness peered back at me. The scratching had stopped. I pushed the door open. The room was pitch black. I fumbled for the light switch, my hand brushing against the wall. Click. The old overhead lamp flickered on. The room was empty. Of course it was. The box sat on the desk, closed. But the air was wrong. It was thick, stale. It smelled like turned earth and old leaves. And it was cold, freezing cold. I took a step toward the desk. My breath plumed in the air in front of me. And that's when I saw it. On the wall opposite the desk, where a large map of the county usually hung. The map was gone. In its place, the wallpaper was visible, and scrawled across it, drawn in what looked like a thick, dark mud, was a single enormous eye. It was crudely drawn, but horrifyingly detailed. The pupil was a void, a black hole that seemed to drink the light from the room. I couldn't look away. I was frozen. The eye, it was looking back at me. I could feel it. a pressure against my mind, and then the whispers started again. Not just my grandmother's voice now, dozens of them, hundreds. A chaotic chorus of overlapping murmurs, all speaking at once, just below the threshold of understanding. They were coming from the eye, from the walls, from the ring on my finger, which was now so cold it was burning my skin. I finally broke. I screamed. I tore the ring from my finger and hurled it across the room. It hit the wall with a tiny, pathetic clink and fell to the floor. Silence. The whispers vanished. The crushing pressure lifted. The room temperature began to slowly normalize. I was left standing there, shaking, sweat cooling on my skin, staring at the muddied, monstrous eye on the wall. I didn't sleep again that night. I sat on the floor of the living room with every light in the house on until the sun came up. The next day, the eye was gone. The map was back on the wall, as if it had never moved. There was no mud, no stain. The ring was gone too. I searched everywhere for it. It had disappeared again. I finished clearing the house in a blind, terrified rush. I sold it to a development company for a fraction of its value, just to be rid of it. I drove back to the city and tried to forget. I told myself it was a grief-induced hallucination, a psychotic break. I almost believed it. Almost. It was a week later. I was in my apartment, trying to lose myself in the mindless noise of the television. I went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. I opened the cupboard, and there, sitting neatly on top of a stack of clean glasses, was the ring. My blood turned to ice. It had followed me. It had traveled. I slammed the cupboard shut and backed away. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. And then my phone buzzed on the counter. A text from my father. Ben, strange question. Was going through some of Mom's old files. Did you ever come across a ring? A silver thing with a green stone? She was adamant before she died that it never be found. She called it a window. She said it wasn't a worry stone. She said it was for the other things, the things that worry on the other side. I looked from my phone to the closed cupboard door. I haven't opened it since. I can't. Sometimes late at night, I think I hear a faint, slow scratch. Scratch. Scratch coming from behind it. I don't know what the ring is. I don't know what it wants. But it's not gone. It's just waiting. It sees what I see. And now, I think it wants me to see what it sees.